Welcome, Karen, to the Growth Concept Podcast. Thank you so much for coming on this episode. After viewing your website, your mission stood out to me. To help people realise their full potential by teaching them about life, money, and how their thoughts may be holding them back. Do you mind explaining to us why this is your mission and why it's so important that you do what you do?
Sure, Keone, and thank you for having me. It's such a privilege and honour to be here. I guess there's so many different thoughts go in my head when you ask that question, and it comes from, I see some balance sheets, shall we say, or some people's financials, which really disturbs me and actually makes me really sad. And so financial stress, I don't know if you're aware, is number one in our community and within Australia. And second to that is relationship issues. And they're slowly connected. So whenever there's financial stress in a person's life, they smash out any person that's around them, you know, their loved ones, with their family, children, and they get affected by that. So great question, because why I got into what I'm doing now is because I'm sick of seeing people stressed out because they're not handling the way they manage their money. And sometimes it's no fault of their own because they've just never been taught.
Do you see that there's lack of education in this area, whether it's investing or having that strong foundation?
Absolutely. There isn't, you're not taught at school, right? So unless you had great role models like grandparents and parents who taught you. So if the grandparents taught the parents, then the parents taught the kids. Now, I was very fortunate, right? Because I was brought up by parents that had great role models as well. My grandparents were good with money, both. I come from an Italian family on my dad's side and an English background on my mum's side. Wow. And yeah, both. One was, my Italian family was self-employed. So I was taught very early how to manage money. And even on my mum's side, they were like PAYG, we call them, where they work for somebody. My grandmother knew every cent when my Gramps put his pay. Because back then they brought the pay packet, they put it on the table. And Gramps used to go, okay, what have I got? So we bought
That's so cool.
I know, he used to buy his beer and stuff, and Grandma would manage the rest of the money. So when I was growing up, on the farm, we had, Dad gave us like a calf for... A calf is like a little heifer. And he said, well, okay, so you raise it, if you get any steers, which are boy bulls, they're for beef. We had to pay the butcher and the abattoir guy to kill it and then cut it up. And then whatever we get left out of that, because we had to pay them, so he taught us early in the primary school age, whatever we get left out of that, we then got for ourselves and put in our bank account. So when I was first 17, I bought my first brand new car with, my own money.
With all your savings from that job?
Yeah, because they taught us how to save. And then they had a piggery, right? So that's the better one, right? Because the pigs have like 11 to 13 piglets. And so once we paid, I remember back then it was like a feed for the year for this sow, which is a female pig. It was about $395 back then. Now I was in, 12, 13, so I was a teenager. And so my sow had like 11, 13 piglets, and sometimes they didn't always make the cut. So they just, because there are a lot of pigs, and so there's about 11. So we got money from pork, but we had to pay our bills first before we got that money in the bank account. Yeah, so we taught really early.
It really taught you how to budget, that cash flow management, whether you had a surplus income.
Absolutely. And but see, at school, so it goes back to your question, at school, you're not taught this stuff, right? So unless you're taught by people who know how to manage money, how else are you going to learn it today?
I want to know, this is a more personal question. Why do you personally think we're not taught about money? Because I've just graduated high school, and we taught briefly how to budget. That was one term at school. But money's such a big thing in today's economy. Why aren't we taught it, you think?
Because schools are set up to teach you how to work.
How to work, yep.
Not taught once you work what you do with your money. And I don't know if it's because they don't have enough time in the curriculum that they've got, or it's just old school. We've taught this is the way we teach, and it goes out to all the schools. That's the curriculum. That's
so when you look at it, a classroom from 100 years ago is identical to now. But if you look at a car from 100 years ago to now, there's been so much evolution to that, but the school system has not kept up, which is so bizarre.
Very true, and I don't know why. I mean, look, we shared earlier before we started that I want to actually get a program into schools, but that is a huge monster to try and tackle the education department to get your program in. It's a big leap, and I know they're starting to do little things like show you money, but we're not got cash anymore. as much as, I still like to see some cash so people can physically see how to manage money, it's tap and go, which is a real false sense of economy, because unless you have a Visa debit, which is your own money, you're tapping and going. All of a sudden, I've only got $5 left in my account.
I feel that, yeah.
That's a hard way to learn, where when you got cash, we're visual people, right?
Yep.
Very few of us are auditory or learn a different way. We see it and then we understand it. That's how we learn.
Because I was talking to Mum about it, and she goes, if only you had cash, because when you have cash in your hands, it feels so much more than just a couple of numbers on the screen.
Absolutely.
Which is so weird, yeah.
I know, it's a different way to living, and when I teach now, I teach people how to manage that Visa debit style and use it like the old envelope. Have you ever heard of the envelope method?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so there's 3 forms of budgeting you can use, different forms. I'll just go through the envelope one, but It's where the old days where you got cash and you put it in envelopes for like rental, mortgage, because you didn't have the bank accounts you did back then.
Yeah.
Groceries was one, utilities, other spending money. So it's all envelopes labelled for each of the areas within your budget, right?
Yep.
When now it's tap and go. So I teach people that the way they can do it in an envelope, but in a modern world, is have different savings accounts linked to their main account, and they have them renamed as mortgage payments, but that's a whole other story, because mortgage payments and extra money should be sitting in off there, but happy to chat with that another time, because that'll help them reduce their mortgage. But for example, utilities, you can have in a separate account. If you're a self-employed, GST and tax in another account, so you don't touch it. Groceries another account, and then when you need it, it just feeds up through to like a Visa debit.
Okay.
So you save them in those separate savings accounts. Like there's separate accounts you can use without naming a brand purposely, but there's a Ubank account that I teach people. There's no affiliation with me at all with Ubank, but it's just a really way to work people. And then they have these different accounts saved up, savings accounts, they have utilities if they're managing a house, rent money put aside, and then they link their Visa debit. So they push the money into there, and then they pay either through direct credit or BSB or tap and go.
That's a really good way of doing it.
It's an easy way.
I might have to check that out. That's good.
Yeah, happy to help you, show you how to, because I've just put a client who's a mortgage broker, because she's just beautiful client, but she's just had debt going everywhere. So we've just managed to clean that up, and then I've taught her how to have money put aside, and you earn interest on it. You earn a little bit of interest, more money in your pocket than someone else's, I say.
So moving back into your career and why you've started this path of finance, which was you were sick of seeing people struggling financially and that relating to relationships. What was a specific turning point in your career that made you realise this isn't a game, this is a really big problem?
When I had my daughter, so she is now 16 next month, she's on the road driving with a learner's permit, so that's a whole another, I saw in the mums group and just having a bit more, because I've always been long-standing career person, so I'd had some time out with her, and I just was hearing conversations. Even I stop and listen a lot, and I'd listen around the community to people as they're walking past you, and you hear the financial stress that's coming out in the way they're managing money. So it wasn't until she was born that I went and I stopped and had the time to think, because I was really privileged enough to learn how to manage money, and I took it for granted. And again, it wasn't, like I said, till she was born and went to mum's group, and I hear these conversations, and the mums were sharing stories, and it's really hard for me to hold my tongue, so I did my very best without putting my opinion forward on how I can help them, because some people don't want help, right? Because they're not in the mindset ready to help. But I was listening going, oh yeah, my hubby manages all our money, and yeah, we've got a lot more debt than I thought we had. And I was thinking, there's some serious loopholes or serious holes here in the way that the couples are managing their money, for starters. And then even the single mums that were in our group, they weren't managing it because they were struggling. And I was thinking, where are they getting taught? Seriously, I mean, a book is hard to read, and that's why I smashed out my little book, because I just wanted to be impactful straight away without having lots of stuff to read, because I actually write like I want to read. I don't like a lot of jargon. Get to the point, tell me what I need to do, follow the steps, that's how I do it.
Yep.
So that's how I got started. Even though I've been in money for so long, started in 1986, my career in financial services, and I didn't realise until that point, and then starting listening, wow, people really struggling. And then I got into broking, right? And so as a broker, I used to see people's financials. It's pretty raw. It's like going to the doctors. You rip the Band-Aid off and you see what's going on.
Yeah, that's a good way of explaining it.
It is. And I told a client, I said, I am like your financial doctor. I see all. And as much as you don't want to, it's private. I will not share with anybody. That's part of my duty of care as well. But I will do my best to help you. So when I have broking clients, I wasn't just their mortgage broker. I would actually sometimes not earn money myself just to try and help them, because I have to sleep at night, right? And I have to live with myself, and I'm not here just to rip someone off just to get them a deal. So sometimes I'd say, for the best of them, I said, this all brings around how I became more passionate about helping people, is that they came to me wanting a refinance, and I said, Mr. and Mrs. Client, just go back to your bank and negotiate a rate, because when you refinance, I may be able to get you a better deal, but let's see if your own bank can do it first. Because if you don't first, then you'll have fees to transfer out. There's government costs to re-put your name on the title with the new lender. There's exit costs from the exit lender. And it does add up to a couple of $1,000. That
just builds up.
It does. It's like $1 here, $300 here. So it's about educating people about, before you do that step in money and want to refinance, for example, or want to get that credit card debt, stop and think, what can you do now to look at how you can manage your money better without costing you more for doing it.
100%. For those who don't know what a mortgage broker is, what is a mortgage broker? If I was going to have a look at your daily life as a mortgage broker, what would I see?
Okay, so daily life of a mortgage broker. So just say, let's use an example. You're a first home buyer, right?
Yep.
So you come to me and you've been a good lad and you saved up 20% deposit. But if you haven't, you saved a minimum of 5%. Then there are ways to help you as a first home buyer get in to a loan without costing you a fortune and having to get into lender's mortgage insurance, which is where you borrow above 80%. The lenders have to have a backup. So they have an insurance policy, which is called LMI, Lender's Mortgage Insurance, which goes to an outside insurer, and that's when you get added that amount onto your home loan. So that's why I always tell people, save as much as you can. So the life of the broker is really having a conversation with you as an example, going, okay, Keone, what are you looking to do? How much are you looking to borrow? How much have you got saved? What's your credit report like? Now, that's a really good one. Your credit report is where I start educating people really highly, and I've written a free course on that anyone can access in a handout. Because your credit report is actually telling you to the bank or to any lender or to a broker. So if you come to me, we have like over 60 plus lenders, so we find you the best deal. So it's the best way to go, to be honest, as a broker, to go to a broker, not a bank, because you only get one product. Your credit report is huge, right? So that actually tells a story about who you are, your character, how you manage your money. And actually, what you don't realise is that if you go to rent, for people who are going to rent, they can go and access your credit report to see what you're like with managing money. Because if you don't make your repayments and you've got defaults, that to them says, well, you're not going to meet my rental payments for the landlord that I'm looking after this property for. You go to an employer and you're applying for a job and you don't have a good credit report, then what happens is the employer goes, well, you may be managing money sometime because you may move into the financial area, or you may just not have a good character because your credit report's showing that you're not, there's a lot going on up here because you're not managing your money. There might have some family issues going on which could affect your workplace. So, okay, so get back into as a broker, there's a whole lot of things that I personally do, which maybe some brokers don't, but as a client coming into the door, we have a conversation. I just check out where you're going. I make sure you've got some savings behind you. I look at where you can access any of the first home buyer grants so that you can get into a home without added costs. I actually look at your credit report, help you clean it up if it needs to. We have to, and I teach you about making sure your bank statements are clean.
Yeah.
Don't have heaps of Uber Eats going through because then they can see your pattern. Because banks go and lenders will go and check your bank statements line by line. And again, it shows you what kind of a character you are and are you going to be a credit risk to them?
It's
huge.
Amazing, Karen. That's truly amazing. I would love to dive more in depth in that in a future episode. That'd be awesome. I noticed on your website you mentioned the 80-20 rule. Finance is 80% mindset and 20% know-how. Do you mind explaining this philosophy in more detail?
Sure. So when I first started back 16 years ago, doing financial coaching, helping people, I always said, it's really 80-20 the other way around. 80% know-how, know what you need to do, budget, save, put an emergency fund in place, learn how to pay yourself, get out of debt, do the debt repayments, and 20% mindset. Well, that was a big kick in the butt, wasn't it? Because as I started working with them, I went, why aren't you following what I'm teaching you? It's a no-brainer. And then I stopped and I just listened to the conversations with clients and I went, okay, it's the other way around. So it took me 10 years to realise that, right?
Was that a gradual switch or something that happened immediately?
It was pretty quick as I started working. And then working with them, and then I went, right, so 80% of what's going up here is affecting the way you're managing your money. So now I turned it around, and when I wrote the book, I went, it's an 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
If your beliefs, your limiting beliefs of how you've grown up is that money is the root of all evil, you've heard all these ones, right? All those sayings. Money doesn't grow trees. You're a terrible person if you have a lot of money if you're rich. Well, no, it just means you're really good at managing money and you're good at business or you're good at accumulating. So it's a different mindset that if you've got that pessimistic, limiting belief, and it's more like what you grew up with, right? The environment you grew up with, as opposed to an environment you go, a healthy mindset. So money is a flow, right? Money shouldn't be held on, it should be flowed. So you accumulate, and my grandmother has said, you look after your own back door, your own family first, and then you give to charity. She was big on charity. Yep. So I've taught my daughter at early age in helping her with the mindset with money is that you have a spending, you have a savings account, and they are equal, and then you give 10% to charity. And every year she gives 10% of her money that she gets as pocket money. And now she does some part-time work, so she still gives that away.
Yeah, wow.
And that's teaching her that money should always be given back to those to help, because you'll always have more money. So the 80-20 rule is, yes, get the 20% under control, but the hard part is getting your brain in gear. So if you've got a limiting belief or you don't feel good about yourself, you're going to start doing those negative patterns of spending everything you earn. You're going to go into more debt thinking, this is going to make me feel good by getting another credit card and I'll buy my TV on credit. And it doesn't. It spirals out of control because you're not meeting your mortgage or your credit card payments.
Do you have any tips on how to become that mentally more stable with the 80-20 rule?
Yeah, it's hard for a lot of people unless you've got a community around you. So you really need to surround yourself with like-minded individuals who help build you up.
How do we do that?
Well, that's hard, right? Because sometimes you're in a group that it's not working. So you've got to find a mentor or a coach like myself, because that's what I do, right? Because I find there's not enough people helping people. So a coach makes you accountable to stick to how to get ahead. And then they put some parameters in place. They do check-ins. I do anyway. I do check-ins to make sure that you're following this. I get people to listen to podcasts, ebooks, Audible, Fill Your Brain, YouTubes that are really motivating and real-life examples of how people have turned it around. So it's surrounding yourself not only with like-minded people, getting a coach on board, because we all need... It's like... Okay, sports, right? When you just look at the Wildcats, just imagine Cotton's having a bad day, right? And he's just kicking himself down because he's not getting into the basket, but his coach is there to guide him and going, you can do it, come on, maybe we'll tweak it a little bit here. This is what you need to do. And before you know it, he's back and being a superstar.
Gotcha. Right.
Even swimming coaches, right?
Yeah.
Who train for the Olympics. They're smashed and they just can't break that record and they try. So the coach is there to get in your head until they're ready to flick the switch over, and then all of a sudden they go, yeah, I can do it. And then all of a sudden they do it. So the coach is that little person in the head.
So then the other 20%, do you have resources where someone can go to know the other 20%?
Yeah. So I have some free courses, I have some paid programs, and then you follow it step by step, and that will move them through to the end result they want to achieve. Because sometimes it might be they want their financial goals set up, they don't have a goal set, and it's not just financial goals. It could be health goals, personal goals, relationship goals. They all form part of it, right?
Yeah, and all relates back to that finance like you were saying earlier.
It does actually.
Leading into strategy, what is the importance of a strategy with whether it's goals, finance, etc.?
Let's put it this way. If you want to go on a trip to Japan, I'm just going to go book a ticket. Then what? So if you don't have a plan of action or a map of what you want to do or an itinerary, what are you going to do? You're going to stand, you get into Japan at the airport.
Just get to the airport, order a coffee.
And then what? And it's like, like you want to go on a road trip down south, right? So you get in your car and you turn it on. But then where are you going? Because that's what you want to do, but you don't know how to get there. You've got to have the strategy because that'll keep you accountable.
And you've explained that so well. That's a very good way of kind of visually seeing that you got to have a somewhat rough step-by-step plan on how you want to get to that end destination.
Absolutely.
And that strategy will help with that.
Yeah.
With your courses, does that obviously help with understanding your strategy? And if you don't know your strategy, can that course help with that?
Absolutely. I start with a financial health check, right? Because I think sometimes we need, and it's really easy, yes, no, maybe, and I ask sometimes in one of the questions when it talks about investing, so then I know where a financial planner can help them. They go, I ask a question, what information do you want to know about investing? What don't you know? Just tell me. And it's like a couple of lines. And maybe it's, I want to know more about shares or managed funds. So then I go, right. So when I work with my financial planner, then and I refer to, I go, this is where this person's really struggling. So they can help them and educate them as well.
Yeah.
But the financial health check is critical because it sort of gives them a very soft way of saying, maybe there's some areas within our money that we're not managing it. And it could be cash flow, could be debt, could be savings, could be pre-retirement, could be understanding super. And it's like 5 or 6 different areas that starts them thinking, and this is where the mindset piece comes in too, because then they go, oh, yeah, I've got a bit more debt, or I just don't know. How do I know what I need for retirement? So there's a question there. I don't know. I'm unsure. So it gets them thinking about their money. And then from there, we know where we can work with them. So then we know maybe they need more on the budgeting and saving, or maybe they need more of a debt reduction strategy.
Yeah, and you all help with that stuff.
Yeah, I do.
Gotcha, that makes sense. So I want to know more about your book, Building the Financial Muscle. Do you mind giving us a quick overview about this book?
Sure. So, Kiani, I wrote this, I think it was just after COVID. It was still around, right? But it was after the pandemic or lockdown. And it got me, I was just hearing again through the socials because what do we do? We're staying at home.
Yeah.
And then we're listening to people. And I was just thinking, this is the first pandemic for a lot of people have had in our generation, right? Where the older generation had a bit of bird flu, but they had more other pandemics that, that killed people.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, we got a lot of debt with people and they're out of work, right? So what are they going to do? They actually need to get the proverbial in order. And so I wrote the book because I just thought, right, I just want someone to quickly pick up and smash, and they can do an ebook or they can buy the physical book.
I've read this book and it took me not even 2 hours before work to start and finish this book. I loved how it was straight to the point.
That's what I wanted.
Yeah.
And I wanted a quick book. I didn't want to go, because I want to read how I read is read, scan, yep, done, tick, this is what I need to do. Quick actionable steps. I didn't want a long book. So I'm really pleased to hear that you got benefit out of that. I had a lady who was older read my book, and I didn't think she'd get much out of it, but she read it and she goes, I just turned things around. It got my mindset back in order. I've actually now got a debt repayment. I've paid off my credit cards. And
that must be so rewarding.
That made me feel so good going, it was such a simple little book that just had an impact. And she goes, no offense, Scotty Pape, but she goes, I read The Barefoot Investor and I never followed any of the steps. I read your book and I literally got out of debt so quickly. And I went, wow.
Even links back to your purpose of helping other people.
Yeah, and helping them fast.
I noticed in your book you spoke about that emergency fund. Would you class that as one of the first steps to building that financial muscle, and why?
Absolutely. Because if you've got some money behind you as a backup, now I always say to people, get 3 to 6 months worth of your living expenses. So if you're a young person, you're staying at home, just visualize that you've got car servicing.
And I should include insurance and all that.
Absolutely, yeah, that's it. I was trying to think of all the things that a young person, because I know what I think a family person has, and they've got a lot of debt, right? That they need to, and they have, health insurances and home insurances. So I always say, whatever your monthly living expenses are, make sure you start putting aside 3 to 6 months. If you can get to 6 months, fantastic. Start whenever you can. If you've only got $10, just keep building it to get to 1,000, because what's going to happen is unexpected events occur that are beyond your control. You may get sick and you've used all your sick leave up and you still got bills to pay. Or you may be injured and you don't have the insurance cover, like the personal insurance, kick in yet. And if it does, it might be a short period of time. So you need extra funds. Or what's the other one? Sickness, job loss.
Yep. Or even injury.
Injury.
And you can't use workers' comp or something.
Yep. Or say like you're at home and your car breaks down, or if you're a homeowner, your air conditioning stops, and we're coming to summer now. If you don't have $1,000 or $2,000, how are you going to get it fixed? Your whole family's going to be, sitting in heat.
Yeah.
Or your car's going to break. How are you going to get to work? And how are you going to get to see your mates so you can have your mental health is still good because you're socialising? So emergency fund is critical.
And you're not too set back with being stuck with that event. You're not set back.
No, you can quickly use that money and then get ready to top it up. Use that money to get you out of a bind quickly.
Would you say 3 to 6 months is the sweet spot, or should we look generally a bit more than that? Like once we hit 3 to 6 months, whatever that number is, should we keep topping that up if
a little bit if you can,
Yep.
But then you want to start tapping into your savings account,
Yeah.
your real savings, where we're going to get some growth to help with some wealth creation. So yeah, definitely get to 6 if you can get a little bit more topped up, because then you'll know what your expenses are. If you've got an older car, you might put a little bit more in case you need to replace your car down the track. Just have a think about what you need. But great question. So 6 is always the rule, but if you've got an older car that you may need to replace, then just do a little extra top up, because it might break down in between you replacing it. But then start building your savings account. No greater reward than seeing some money in the bank. It makes you feel really good, and that takes the stress off life, right? So and
helps with that mindset, which is the majority of it, like you were saying.
And you walk with a springy step, knowing I've got money behind me, and if I want to treat my parents or my friends to something who, I feel good, and take them out for dinner, you can do it knowing that you've got money behind you.
Yeah, it's like that lighter backpack, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah.
With your book, you asked some very important questions, which I want to touch on. One of them was, did I need half of the things I bought? This is that financial health check.
Yeah.
And the second question was, could I have gone without that thing I bought? What other questions can I ask myself to really question if what I bought is going to bring value?
So when you go to buy something, I prefer you use cash, which is like through Visa debit. Okay. Yep. So we shared a bit of that because cash is very hard to come by today, and banks are making that even more so with closing branches down and that. So I personally think if you're going to make a purchase, and I tell myself all this time, do I really need to buy that? Will it bring me joy, right? Or is it just another piece of clothing or another gadget that really is not going to do anything and just sit on the kitchen bench or store in the cupboard as clothing, for example? Or even, because it's a shiny object syndrome, right? You see it advertised on the TV and they're really good at sucking us in for that. But then you go to, I took, no word of a lie, 12 months before I got my first air fryer. Because I go, do I really want it? I've got other things that can do the job. Do I really want it? And at the end of the day, when I got it, it was 12 months and I really worked out if I want it. It's hard to ask that question, right? Because you think everyone wants everything today, instant gratification.
Especially, I'm so impatient with stuff.
Me too. So for me, it's a discipline.
Confession, yeah.
It is. But then that thing would be staying on the bench and not being used, because I've bought stuff for my KitchenAid that I still haven't used, right? The spiraler that does it.
Even taking that second, do I really need it? Just take that reflection could be the difference between wasting $1,000
or take 24 hours to 2 days. Say 24 hours, take a breather and think, do I really need it? And if you really can't live without it and you're going to use it all the time, well, that's going to be value for money.
Yep, gotcha. I got one last question for you, Karen. If you could go back to your 18-year-old self with the knowledge you have now, what would you tell yourself and why?
I really wouldn't tell myself anything different.
Really?
I thought about that question. When I was 18, though, there was only one thing and that's how I think my journey started was, back then, insurance policies and superannuation were the key, right? So you built your super up. Years ago, they were, the insurance brokers used to get 10% commission, right? So you were locked in for 2 years, 3 years before you can even move your super or get anything out, right? Because they had to pay the commission. And the Royal Commissions and all that changed everything about the way they did commissions. The only thing I would think, and that it's not that I would change anything, I got into the mindset then going, wow, I got locked into something that I'd never would have done if I'd known that, because I went overseas and I lived overseas in the UK. And I wanted to use that money to transfer out and take some out, because it was my money. It wasn't compulsory super. I was locked in, and when I got the thousands of dollars that I put in, because my mum and dad were very good at, you save for the future, that policy locked me in, and I lost a lot of money when I pulled it out. And I couldn't let it sit there because the fees were going to eat up. So I look back and go, there's nothing I would have told my younger self. What I would tell myself now as a homeowner, which I wasn't taught, was how to use my mortgage more effectively to smash down the debt. So when I was younger, I had a lot of investments, right? And I was very good at building wealth. And then I used some of it to fund my own maternity leave. So I had several properties in New Queensland when I was living. If I had known back then some of the strategies that are around for mortgage reduction, I would have smashed down my debt a lot faster. So nothing I would have said 18 when I was 18.
Yeah.
It is now older, it's about how I could have managed that mortgage, which is big, and smash it down while I had tenants in there to pay it off. I would have used the offset better. But I didn't know offsets went around then, and they weren't taught.
Yeah, and it also helps with having that family that have been switched on with money management, cash flow, investing as well. For someone who may not have, let's just say, finance as an openly discussed topic around the kitchen table, where can someone go to really understand finance a bit more? Yes, your website, and I'll make sure we check that out. With your website, is that where someone can go to find all the general information, as well as if they want that enhanced information, they can tap into that?
Because I'm just starting up the podcast again, and I realised my podcasts weren't how I normally speak like we are now. I was doing something, following somebody else's advice. So I'm now going to change my tone of my podcast to educate people, like yourself, which is helping educate people. I've got blogs, so there's free blogs on there. I'm starting to generate more YouTube, so people can visually see me.
What's your podcast called?
Managing Money Made Easy.
Managing Money Made Easy.
Well, awesome. Thank you. So you can get it. So everything's on financialmanagement101.com or .com.au, both at work. And in there's a whole lot of free resources, so people can use the financial health check for free. There's budgeting spreadsheet. I've got credit reports. I've got how to be home loan ready. There's a whole lot of free stuff there. So I like to give people lots of stuff before they even think of working with me, so they can get the tone of how I operate.
That personality.
Yeah, because I don't look. I'm not everyone's cup of tea, right? And we're
you can't be.
No, I can't be. And we're all not a one size fits all. That's why there's so many people in different specialties to help people. But if people resonate with me because they like my open and direct style, and when I say direct is not harsh. It's just, this is what you need to do. This is how I can help you. And then that mothering instinct comes in, and I wrap around you and I go, I'm going to make it work for you, because I'm going to help you with the mindset move through, because the know-how 20% piece is there. But I'm going to make sure you achieve your goals, because I've got lots of reviews now. And one beautiful lady has done a video review, and she was in her 50s, and how I helped her get out of debt, get her into her own home. She was so stressed when she came to me, and she tells a story. And it's very courageous when people want to share their story, because most people don't want to share their money story. Yeah. But she had the courage, and I do bless her and thank her for that. And it's on my website. So she shared how I helped her, and she was really at the brink of major financial stress. And now she's got beautiful relationships with the family as well, where they were a bit, tetchy because she was stressed out. But yeah she's debt free.
Thank you so much for sharing these experiences, Karen. Your story is so inspiring, and all your resources will be linked in the show notes of this podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.